Hi everybody, I trust you're all well. Just going to read you a little something that I've been looking into. It's on the subject of traumatic bonding. This is victims and survivors of psychopaths. So I'll just read this reasonably short article to you, and then I'll expand a little bit with my thoughts on the subject. Okay. Traumatic bonding is strong emotional ties that develop between two persons, where one person intermittently harasses, beats, threatens, abuses, or intimidates the other. Several conditions have been identified that must be present for a traumatic bond to occur. Number 1. There must be an imbalance of power, with one person more in control of key aspects of the relationship, such as setting themselves up as the authority through such things as controlling the finances, or making most of the relationship decisions, or using threats and intimidations so the relationship has become lopsided. 2. The abusive behaviour is sporadic in nature. It is characterized by intermittent reinforcement, which means there is the alternating of high intense positives, such as intense kindness or affection, and the negatives of the abusive behaviour. 3. The victim engages in denial of the abuse for emotional self-protection. In severe abuse, this can be psychological or physical, one form of psychological protection strategy is disassociation, where the victim experiences the abuse as if it is not happening to them, but as if they are outside their body watching the scene unfold, like watching a movie. Dissociative states allow the victim to compartmentalize the abusive aspects of the relationship in order to focus on the positive aspects. The use of denial and distancing oneself from the abuse are forms of what is called cognitive dissonance. In abusive relationships, this means that what is happening to the victim is so horrible, so far removed from their thoughts and expectations of the world, that it is dissonant or out of tune or at odds with the pre-existing expectations and reality. Since the victim feels powerless to change the situation, they rely on emotional strategies to try to make it less dissonant, to try to somehow make it fit, to cope with the contradicting behaviours of the abuser, and to survive the abuse, the person literally has to change how they perceive reality. Studies also show a person is more loyal and committed to a person or situation that is difficult, uncomfortable, or even humiliating, and the more the victim has invested in the relationship, the more they need to justify their position. Cognitive dissonance is a powerful self-preservation mechanism which can completely distort and override the truth, with the victim developing a tolerance for the abuse and normalizing the abuser's behaviour, despite evidence to the contrary. Number 4. The victim masks that abuse that is happening, may not have admitted it to anyone, not even to themselves. Trauma bonding makes it easier for a victim to survive within the relationship, but it severely undermines the victim's self-structures, undermining their ability to accurately evaluate danger, and impairs their ability to perceive of alternatives to the situation. Once a trauma bond is established, it becomes extremely difficult for the victim to break free of the relationship. The way humans respond to trauma is thought to have a biological basis, and reactions to trauma was first described a century ago with the term railroad spine being used. Another term used has been shell-shocked. Victims overwhelmed with terror suffer from an overload of their system, and to be able to function, they must distort reality. They often shut down emotionally and sometimes later describe themselves as having felt robotic. intellectually knowing what's happening but feeling frozen or numb and unable to take action. A victim must feel safe and out of survival mode before they will be able to make cognitive changes. Many victims feel the compulsion to tell and retell the events of the trauma in an attempt to come to terms with what's happened to them and try to integrate it, reaching out to others for contact, safety and stability. Other victims react in an opposite manner, withdrawing into a shell of self-imposed isolation. The trauma bond can persist even after the victim leaves the relationship, with it sometimes taking months or even years for them to completely break the bond. Now, this article is talking about an individual experience, like a personal experience. Talking about being in a relationship. So one person is the victim and one person is the abuser, and it's describing the reaction to the abuse and how the victim copes. Now let's take that up a scale. Let's think about this on a mass level. This psychological trauma that is being described here is being used on a mass scale on mass populations, and this is where we get into MK Ultra mind control and subjects like that, because that micro level in a relationship between two people can be expanded into a global level, and how the psychopathic control system treats populations. And this is what you've got to understand, that why it's so hard for people to wake up, is because they are trauma bonded with these psychopathic leaders. So I know it's frustrating, and I've felt it myself. You know what it's like when you speak to people and you're presenting with all the facts and all the evidence, and they don't want to hear it, and it's like, it makes you feel crazy, because you're like, why can't they snap out of it? Why can't they look at this information and go, oh my god, I can't believe it, show me more, how rarely have you had that conversation? Now some people react quite well, and now and again you'll find somebody and they're really interested in something that you're showing them and stuff like that. But how often really do they go away and look into it more themselves? You've started something, how rare is that? I think you find that most people might, well, I was going to say they would politely listen and what have you, but that's not really the case. A lot of people become very defensive. I think that's why, we have to really take this into account when we're thinking about why more people don't see this stuff. Because it's like in the Matrix, they're so immersed in the system, they become so reliant on the system. They've trauma bonded, with their leaders or with the authority figure. But even if you come in and say, my god, they're treating you horribly, and look at all the things that they're doing to you, and here's all the facts of all the things that they've done to you, and I've got video evidence of them doing this to you, they'll defend the abuser rather than admit that they have been a victim. And you know, people get so frustrated, and you think, oh, these people are so fucking stupid. What the fuck, you know, you're telling them this, that, the other, and they won't listen. But this is their survival mechanism. They have built a protective shield around themselves. To be able to cope. They have cognitive dissonance. To be able to cope with this psychopathic world that we live in, they will fight and defend it. Yeah? Now, that is crazy, but it's a normal reaction to trauma. So even from a small scale in a relationship to a large scale, these people who won't wake up, who refuse to see the truth, who refuse to look into anything, who refuse to hear a bad word about these people and that people, yeah? This is them trying to survive in their mind. And the bit about where it says they have to create their own reality. Now, do you see how insidious this is? Because the inflicting of trauma has such an effect that people will actually change their reality to survive. And this is known by the abuser, yeah, i.e. the governments or the corporations, the psychopaths, you know, the bankers. They know that that's going to be the reaction, because they've studied humans, yeah. They know how the human mind works. They know how the reaction to this, what the reaction to this trauma will be. So not only do they get to be masochistic and psychopathic to you, but they know that the reaction to that is that you will disassociate and create your own reality to be able to survive. So it's actually makes that easier for them to make an illusory reality. Yeah. So while we in the truth movement or okay, I don't want to use those words, but you know, for us who can see through this, see through them, their methodology, yeah, it's obvious, you know. It's like, these people are fucking crazy, they're psychopathic, they're treating everyone like shit, they're violent, they're insane, they're out of control, they're greedy, yeah. But that's like what, 10% of us, maybe at most. You've got this whole 90% who wouldn't even, one, consider that it is, two, want to do anything about it. So it's like the unwillingness to be able to see it is purely a survival mechanism on their part.